So, sir, as I indicated, the challenge which every corporate or investment faces is finding the right combination in the capital structure. You might have multiple forms of debt out there. You might have one form of equity, but multiple forms of debt. As I had indicated, debt could be from a bank, debt could be from a financial institution, debt could be from what is called as a foreign financial institution, so on and so forth out there. But what is it? I have indicated WACC out here. My purpose, my objective is to ensure that my WACC or average cost of capital is at the lower end out. And this combination of debt and equity can change your capital structure, can change your cost of capital completely. So, when I say change it, cost of capital, at a stage when debt becomes higher, your cost of at a stage when debt gets into your capital structure, the overall cost of capital, weighted average cost of capital can come down, but beyond a stage, debt also becomes costly and the overall cost of capital can go up. How can debt become costly? As I had indicated in this example, please note, as and when you have more and more debt, the risk of debt holders also keep increasing. If the risk of debt holders also keep increasing, they will demand higher and higher and higher interest rate out there. So, what happens? The cost of debt also increases. If debt comes into the capital structure, cost of equity increases. That we saw that in this example out here. Why? Because the risk of equity holder increases, because so the cost of equity also increases. So, but traditionally debt is always a cheaper source of finance as compared to equity, because debt can be secured out. Sir, can there be an unsecured debt? Yes, there can be unsecured debt also, but again risk and return relationship. If the debt is unsecured, then that cost of debt will be higher as compared to a debt which is secured for the same purpose. Now, all these, when we talk about risk measurement etc., the proxy what we use is we use what is called as credit rating out there. You would have seen alphabets like AAA or AA plus or A plus or A minus or triple B or triple B or double B plus etc., etc., etc. Now, these are all done by an external agency called as credit rating agencies. You are in India, if we look at CRISIL, we look at ICRA, we look at what you call it as Fitch and so on and so forth. International, of course, Standard & Poor, Moody's etc. So, what do they indicate? They indicate, these alphabets indicate, they are supposed to signify the level of risk out. The alphabet AAA says that the investment will ensure timely servicing. When we say timely servicing, timely repayment of interest and principal, and whatever, normally government bonds will always AAA because government cannot default. And as these alphabets keep going down, what are the ranges of alphabets? Each agency has, normally this is the alphabets out there, and as these alphabets keep varying, your cost of debt will also keep increasing, or cost of borrowing will also increase. Supposing I say, I come out with a bond in the market which is rated AAA. If it is rated AAA, I am able to get money at 5% or 6% or whatever it is, 5 or 6 or whatever it is. Moment the alphabet becomes A plus from AAA, then I will be able to garner funds only at about 9% out. Why that 3% or 4% extra? Because AAA risk level is 0, almost. A plus risk level is relatively higher. Moment risk level is relatively higher. Risk level is relative risk level. Relative risk level as compared to AAA is higher. you will demand some more, you will demand what do you call it as, the investor will demand a higher compensation for the risk what he takes. So, naturally he will not invest if you give 6%, he will invest only if you give 9% out. The extra 4 or 5% is for compensation for the risk what the investor is undertaking out there. Now, can it be secured? For example, if the same bond is secured, it could have a better rating. If the same bond is unsecured, it will have a poor rating. Collateral, what we call it as, etc. So, this rating also decides what is called as the interest rate. That is how debt instruments are normally classified and so on and so forth. So, what is the objective? Now, coming back to the objective of the company. Coming back to the objective of the company is to keep the WACC at the lowest possible level. Is to keep WACC at the lowest possible level. Now, to keep it at the lowest possible level, I have to have a combination of debt and equity. Now, let me take an example. I am taking only one form of debt. Please note, debt can be multiple forms, bank loan, financial institution loan, etc., etc. I have all combinations out there and I am not looking at all that. I am looking at only one. Let me take an example out there. I am going to share my screen out here. Boulder Holdings is a 100% equity based company operating in the northeastern part of India with a registered office at Guwahati. The company intends to restructure its capital by adding a debt component to the capital structure, provided it reduces the overall cost of capital. It will add the debt only if it reduces the overall cost of capital, otherwise it is not bothered about it. Now, the new debt will not be used for expanding the business, but will be utilized for a planned buyback of shares. That means what? Very simple. Their net income or their revenues is not going to substantially increase, or they are not adding a facility. It is either going to remain the same or it is going to have the same growth factor as it had earlier. So, what happens? This money is not used for expanding the facility. This money is used only for buyback of the shares out there, that is all. And further they say the prevailing risk free rate in the market is 3.5%. That means investing in a government bond is going to give me 3.5% return, that is all. I have not mentioned the time period, maybe take 5 years, maybe take 4 years, whatever it is. The long term index, that is index return, is estimated at an average of 8.75%. That is, I invest in the index, it gives me 8.75% return. My risk free rate is 3.5% out there. That means my risk premium is 8.75 minus 3.5, that is 5.25% is the risk premium I have. That is, by investing in the market, I get an additional 5.25% in addition to the risk free rate out there. The current risk profile of the company is measured in the beta and is measured by beta in terms of beta is pegged at 1.25. That means investing in this company is slightly higher than investing in the market. So, what is it? Naturally, you will know if the risk profile is higher than 1, your expected return will have to be higher than 8.75. Expected return will be higher than 8.75, or the cost of investment will be higher than 8.75 out there. That is what we are basically looking at in this particular case. The company has to necessarily get a debt, or necessarily get the debt instrument credit rated, and the interest cost of that credit debt instrument will depend on the credit rating that is awarded. That is what I explained to you. The company is exploring various options of debt in the market. If they raise 5% of their capital through debt from the market without any collateral, leading to a credit rating of A with a cost of debt of 6%. That is, no collateral, only 5% if they raise, the credit rating alphabet is A, their interest cost is 6%. There are other three options. They can raise 25% from the market, but with collateral, then they will have a double A credit rating that will have an interest cost of 5%. They can go for what do you call it as a I think there is a small error out here. They can go for what do you call it as 50% credit rating out there, and then no, I think we were right. They can go for 50% of the capital in the form of debt, and they will get a triple B credit rating which will attract about 9.5% out there, or they can go for 75% of their capital as what do you call it as total capital as debt, and that will give them a what do you call it double B credit rating, and the interest rate what they will have to garner is 11%. The prevailing tax rate is 30%. Now the question is, which is the best possible option? Should they raise 5% without collateral? Should they raise 25%? Should they raise 50 or should they raise 75? That is the question that we need to look at. So let us try and solve it in the with the using. Now we see this here out here. All these aspects are given. Now we need to find out what is called as WACC out there. Let us go step by step in this case. Now baseline, currently what is the cost of equity? Let us look at, because it is 100% equity. Currently what is the cost of equity out here? Currently what is the cost of equity? We use the same model of what is called as CAPM in this particular case, capital asset pricing model. What is that? I am going to write out the formulas out here. That is equal to risk-free rate plus beta of the investment multiplied by what is called as the market premium. So in this particular case, what is the risk-free rate? Risk-free rate we saw is 3.5% out there, plus beta of the investment is normal is about 1.25, that is what is given out there, and then I will say multiplied by market premium we know it is about 5.25% out there. 5.25% out there. This is what we are going to do. So the same thing, I am just going to just what do you call it as copy this out, and then I am just going to do the calculation for you guys, and the entire thing I basically tried to explain the whole thing here for the purpose of what do you call it as for the purpose of ease, that is all. Otherwise the entire thing I am basically going to I'm just doing it out here in this particular case out there, and we know in this particular case the cost of equity out here, that is unlevered cost of equity without any debt, unlevered cost of equity unlevered cost of equity in this particular case out here. I can just do what is called as a wrap text. Unlevered cost of equity in this case is 10.06. Unlevered means what? Leverage means moment there is debt. Leverage, that is you are using equity and you are borrowing, that is what we call it as leverage. I have leveraged it, leveraged my capital. Leverage my capital means I have put in $100 as equity, I have used that and then borrowed another $50 from somewhere. So I have leveraged my capital. This is without any borrowing. What is happening? Unlevered cost of equity is so much, 10.06% out there. It is 1 minus this 5% out there, but is basically 95%. And then the same thing, 1 minus 25% if I have 25% debt, and then so on and so forth out there, and that is what gives me the equity out here. Now I need to calculate what is called as one more column I will introduce out here, what we call it as in this particular case debt and equity, debt by equity. Debt by equity out there. What is the debt by equity ratio? Debt equity I did teach you when I was doing the analysis of the financial statement. That is, this is the debt divided by my equity out here. I am just doing it out here in this case. I don't want to have it in the form of a percentage. I would keep it very generic out there. That's all. Or I can just in this particular case, I can just keep it this way. Or I can just do it, keep it in the form of a percentage debt to equity ratio out there. Either way is perfectly fine. I can just keep it in the form of this, or I can just keep it in the form of a percentage also, whatever it is. Now the question is, what is this levered beta? Now let us look at this levered beta. I am going back to my explanation out here. What is this levered beta? Unlevered means no debt, no borrowing. That means I have already explained. Moment you borrow, what happens? The risk level of equity holders increases. Moment you borrow, risk level of equity increases. I did show an example. So now I have to find levered beta. Levered beta out there for the equity, for the levered beta itself is basically for the equity out there. So when I have a 5% debt, what is the beta of equity? If I have a 25% debt, what is the beta of equity? If I have a 50% debt, what is the beta of equity? If I have a 75% debt, what is the beta of equity? Now how do we do that? We basically, when we say levered beta is equal to unlevered beta into what do you call it as 1 plus this 1 minus tax rate, because we have to take out the tax advantage which you will receive because of the debt. We will have to take out the tax advantage which you will receive because of the debt into what is called as debt by equity. Into what is called as debt by equity. It is unlevered beta into debt by equity. What am I doing? I am taking out the tax advantage here, 1 plus 1 minus 2. Go back to the return on capital employed calculation. That is what I am doing. So let us say if they have 5% debt, if I have a 5% debt out there, then what happens? The levered beta will be 1.25 in this case into 1 plus 1 minus tax rate is 30%, that is what I have given, I think. So into 0.3 into debt by equity 5 by 95, 5% by 95% out there. That is all I need to look at. I can do the same thing when I have a 25% debt. What am I doing out there? I can say the same calculation I can basically do. I can say that is equal to 1.25 into 1 plus of 1 minus 0.3, because that is the tax rate, into 25% by 75% out there. That is all what I have done. That gives me what is called as the levered beta of for the equity out there. Now let us go back and calculate. I am just doing it with the help of this Excel itself. So the question is levered beta. Levered means 5% equity. That is what I did show what is called as how do we calculate it out there. Let me try and see if I can do it with the help of an Excel out here. That is my unlevered beta into what 1 plus 1 minus the tax rate out here into what is called as the debt by equity ratio, what I basically have out here in this case. So the unlevered beta, unlevered beta is 1.25. Moment I have a 5% debt in the component, in the capital structure, the risk of equity holders increases, it becomes, so what happens? The beta becomes 1.3. Let me do the same thing out here. For moment I have 25% equity out there, unlevered beta into 1 plus 1 minus the tax rate out there into what is called as the debt by equity part of it out there in this particular case, and that gives me what is called as 1.54. I can do the same thing out here in this particular case again. Now, what a moment I have 25% equity, debt, the risk of equity holder increases substantially, it becomes 1.54. I can do it for 50% out there. Moment there is 50% out here, it becomes what you call it as 1 minus 30% out there into debt by equity in this particular case out here, debt by equity out here in this particular case, and that becomes 2.13. The same thing moment you see that as the debt component keeps increasing, the risk of equity holders keep on increasing out there. Next I will have the last aspect out here and into what is called as 1 plus 1 minus this 30% out there into what is called as my tax rate, my debt and equity rate out there, and that is what happens, and you can see it has increased up to 30.88. Now with this beta, I will calculate the cost of equity. What is the cost of equity? CAPM, risk free rate, this is the same thing I will use. Market premium is 5.25. How did I get 5.25? Market return is 8.75. 3.5 is risk free rate, that is my market is giving me 5.25% more than the risk free rate. So what is the cost of equity? Cost of equity is very simple, my risk free rate plus beta, unlevered beta into what is called as the market premium that I am basically getting out there. This is what basically becomes the cost of equity. Cost of equity is risk free rate plus what is called as beta into what is called as the market premium in this particular case out there. I can do the same thing, risk free rate plus beta into market premium out there, and the same thing out here, risk free rate plus beta into market premium. Now what happens as the risk level, as debt increases in the firm, risk level of the equity holders increases. As the risk level of equity holders increases, cost of equity also keeps increasing. Cost of equity also keeps increasing. Now I will calculate WACC out there, weighted average cost of capital. What is weighted average cost of capital? What is called as cost of equity into percentage of equity plus cost of debt, what is called a cost of debt into percentage of debt into 1 minus the tax rate out there into 1 minus the tax rate out there, and that is all what will give me what you call it as weighted average cost of capital. I am going to redo it here. Cost of equity into percentage of equity out there plus cost of debt into percentage of debt out there in this particular case into 1 minus my tax rate out there 30% in this particular case, tax advantage, I will see this. Now I just go pull this same thing out here. I think I have just got the number, cells have gone wrong, that is all, cells have, this is 15, I just have to change this to 15, I think that will be fine. Out here, I will have to make it because everything it took the next cell. Now you see this, beautiful. Though 5% capital debt in the capital structure, my WACC is 10%. Moment I have 25% debt in the capital structure, it comes down to 9.6. But moment I have a 50%, it basically goes up to 10.7 out there. And then moment I have 75%, it goes up. So what is the thing? It may not be ideal for me to have a 10% debt in the capital structure. It might be ideal for me to have a 25% debt in my capital structure, because what happens? Moment I have 25% debt in the capital structure, my overall cost of capital is low. It is only 9.6% as you see here. So, what is the objective? It is a simple curve which basically moves out there. That is, as debt, what happens? My cost of capital will follow this. So, you are looking at some point out here in this particular case, curve out there, where the cost of capital will be at the lowest. Some combination will basically give you. Here you can see, moment I have a 5% debt, 95% equity, my cost of capital is still higher. Moment I bring in 25%, my cost of capital keeps reducing out there. Though risk level is higher as compared to 5%, risk level of the equity holders is higher, cost of equity is higher, my overall cost of capital is reducing out there. So, it is, and as debt again increases, my cost of capital overall keeps increasing. As debt reduces beyond 25%, my cost of capital will keep increasing out there. So, you reach something called a sweet spot out there. So, that is where this becomes extremely important in this particular case out. This becomes, what do you call it, is extremely important out there. So, the cost of capital, that is where we talked about in this particular case, optimum capital structure. I talked about, what do you call it, as optimum capital structure out there. The optimum capital structure, we look at correct combination of debt and equity. We look at something called a correct combination of debt and equity, which will keep the cost of capital at the lowest. So, in short we saw it. So, overall what do we do? Look at finance. I am going to sum up in the next minute or so. Overall what do we see? We see sourcing fund at the lowest cost. That is what we keep cost of capital at the lowest. Investing in projects which give higher or highest NPV. That's all. That is what we saw in DCF. That is all what we are looking at. This brings us to the end of, what do you call it, as the basics of accounting and finance part of it. Very basics. So far what we did was, we learned, moment somebody says financial forensics, somebody will ask you, do you know finance? Do you know financial statements? Do you know what is the purpose of finance? Sourcing and investing. What is the purpose? I should not look blank, right? That is the purpose of this 50% or more than little over 50% of the course, whatever you've spent, was to understand what is the financial statement. How does transaction get recorded? How is it reflected? What is the job of a finance? Source fund, invest funds, and that is what we did. Now onwards, you move to the next stage where we are going to look at more analytics and so on, which I will not be handling. Some of my colleagues will basically come and take over from here. My job is more in the accounting and finance part of it. Thank you very much. Thank you.